So, welcome to this very special edition of Entrepreneurship Hour After Dark, and almost welcome to fall break. I'm really glad that you guys could be here this evening because tonight's class is going to tackle some aspects of entrepreneurship that we have not addressed so far. Hopefully, you will leave here tonight with a greater appreciation for the relationship between tools, design, and artistry, and pushing the envelope on all of the above. We are fortunate to have representatives here that are all successful in their own right, but are connected in some rather unique ways. First, we're going to be hearing from Jeff Krause, who is the CEO of the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. SME has dedicated itself for more than 80 years to connecting those that are passionate about making things to improve our world while remaining at the cutting edge of technological advancements. And speaking of cutting edge, Jeff is going to be introducing Chip Burnham, who is the VP of Global Marketing for Flow International. Flow is a state-of-the-art leader in Waterjet technology, and I think you will have a chance to appreciate how the right tools in the hands of a talented artist can create innovation and inspiration that pushes the boundaries of design and imagination, which brings me to our third guest this evening, Paul Teutul Jr. I'll let Chip and Jeff have the honors of providing the full introduction of Paul, who is perhaps best known for his jaw-dropping motorcycles and television celebrity, but suffice it to say, his story and his work and his continuing ambitions are anchored in the principles of entrepreneurship well beyond those obvious examples. So let's please give a warm 407 welcome to Jeff Krause, who's going to kick off the rest of tonight's class. Thank you.
All right, I'm already know. Good evening. It's great to be here with you. First, I'd like to thank Professor Franks and University of Michigan for hosting us. So I'm from SME, Society of Manufacturing Engineers. We've been around for 80-something years. We're a nonprofit organization, and what we do is one thing. We support manufacturing, because manufacturing drives our economy and really supports creating wealth in our nation. Now, as an organization, how do we support manufacturing? We do two things. We promote the advancement of manufacturing technologies, and we develop the skills of the current and the future manufacturing workforce. We're going to run a short video. I'll make a couple other comments, and we'll move on with the program.
Manufacturing is key to economic growth and prosperity. It created your car, your computer, even your home. Everyday life would not be what it is without manufacturing. Once upon a time, we were known as the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, but now we just go by SME. So who are we and what do we do? In a nutshell, SME is a one-stop shop for manufacturing know-how and workforce development. We equip individuals and companies with the tools needed to succeed in an ever-changing environment and to keep up with technology. At SME, we promote advanced technology that innovates the manufacturing field. We're able to do that with our media publications that come right to your door or straight to your phone. And we host national trade shows and conferences that feature manufacturing technology and solutions to keep you at the top of your game. We inspire, prepare, and support our members and anyone who wants to excel in manufacturing. Because our industry's future is constantly on our mind. That's why we offer scholarships to students and bring curriculum into high schools across the country to foster the next generation of manufacturing professionals. So whether you're in manufacturing already or curious about it, we can help because we know the ins and outs of this industry and we want to help you reach your goals. SME, connecting, preparing, inspiring.
All right, so manufacturing is an industry, as I said, that creates a ton of wealth, and we do that with innovation. And with Chip Burnham from Flow coming out, and Chip is the Vice President of Marketing for Flow, it's amazing. You're going to see some great examples of how advanced technologies really are put into work. And it's very exciting. Just one last thing before Chip comes out, and that is one of our business units within SME is membership. And what we have is over 18,000 members, And I'd like to encourage you, if you have an interest in learning more about manufacturing and develop a passion for manufacturing, then we're a great organization to align with. We've got a whole staff out there, we've got some giveaways, and we can talk to you about what membership does. You can join 18,000 other members and reach into 500,000 manufacturing practitioners that have expertise around our nation and around the world about the advanced technologies. You can connect with them, mentor with them, and get access to some very good objective information about manufacturing careers. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Chip Burnham, Vice President of Marketing at Flow. Chip?
Thank you very much, Jeff. I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jeff and Tom. With the Waterjet, we've been working with Paul Jr. Designs and on the American Chopper Show for many years, in fact, 13 years. And the Waterjet is used in a variety of different applications. It is actually one of the fastest growing major machine tool processes in the world. Are you actually cutting with water? And the answer is yes. The pure Waterjet provides a supersonic erosion and removes material. And that cuts soft materials like gaskets, foam, plastics, and such. The abrasive Waterjet then cuts the hard materials. So it is a supersonic erosion in both cases, but the water is only doing the cutting in the pure Waterjet. In the abrasive Waterjet, the abrasive particles are doing the cutting, and the water is only there to accelerate those particles. So this is how it works. High pressure water is generated up to with a pump rated to 94,000 psi. A fire hose, for example, is going to be at 300 psi, so we're using a lot more pressure and a lot less water. High pressure water is going to come in here, and then the abrasive will be pulled in through a Venturi effect and accelerated like a bullet out of a rifle. The transition point for the water is right here where the orifice is. That orifice is going to be a diamond or a sapphire, and it converts the water pressure to velocity. So from an engineering principle, we're taking a very high pressure level of, say, 94,000 psi, and we're making a near Mach 4 jet. So we exchange the pressure to velocity when that water goes through the tiny orifice. The abrasive particles are added after the orifice there. After the Waterjet stream is made, the pure Waterjet stream, the abrasive particles come in later. So we're not pumping mud. That would be very difficult at these pressures. We're pumping water, and then the abrasive is added later. So the pure Waterjet cuts the soft materials, and the abrasive Waterjet cuts the hard materials. In fact, we can cut almost anything. A supersonic erosion process has a different material approach than any other machine tool, and so we can cut any metal, all metals, over a foot thick with a standard machine. In fact, we cut titanium faster than we cut steel. Titanium is obviously very hard and very strong material, and with traditional machining methods like a mill or a lathe, you would be cutting titanium much, much, much slower, blowing through a lot of your tools trying to cut it. But with a Waterjet, we cut titanium faster than we cut steel. Your composites, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Stone and tile, and then the food products here and the paper products, the gaskets and such, that's going to be pure water. So if you can cut it with a knife, you can cut it with pure water. If you need something to have more power, you add in the abrasive Waterjet. It's an extremely versatile process. Hopefully my movies will play. These things are moving around, cutting all these materials: aluminum, stone, carbon fiber, titanium, glass, and stainless. So let's look at these for a moment. The stainless, we're cutting over 6 inches thick there. As I said, we can cut over 12 inches thick through any material. In this case, we're going about 6 inches. We can cut a precise part at about 3 inches or less with a Waterjet, but you can rough cut over a foot thick. Glass and stone over here, and there's the glass. These materials are brittle and difficult to machine for very different reasons, and yet the erosion process cuts them very well. Composites is another example. If you look at of something that's hard to cut and is brittle, if you look closely, you can see sparks coming off that titanium piece right there. Titanium, like magnesium in powder form, ignites with just a little bit of warmth. But there's no heat going into the material. The supersonic erosion process is a very gentle process, and no heat goes into the material itself. So titanium, although you see the sparks coming off, is still cut without any heat or stress going into that material. End markets and applications. You've seen some of the different materials that can be cut. I'm going to talk about the A's here, the A's being aerospace, architecture, and automotive. First of all, in aerospace, where is a water jet used? One of the most famous ones is the trimming of the composite wings in the Boeing and Airbus commercial aircraft. And they are all cut with our flow water jets. And they're doing the spars, the struts, and trimming of the composite wings. That's a bidirectional carbon fiber composite, aircraft grade, of course, because it's used in the aircraft industry. And the water jet's used because it does not do any damage to the carbon fiber when it's cutting. There's no micro cracks, there's no whiskers that are left behind, there's no delamination or burning. And so that's obviously very good for an engineer, because whatever you're developing or designing a product, you want to make sure that the materials that you're using after they've been manufactured have the same properties that you thought they were going to have when you began your design. So with a water jet, you know you've separated that material and created your part, but you didn't do any damage to it. And if during the Q&A, and if you come up later, I'll show you some of the various materials like the carbon fiber. You can look real close at that edge. And everything that you see cut with that water jet is going to have a satin smooth edge with no heat affected zone and no mechanical stresses, and that's very, very important. Aerospace will also cut titanium parts because it's light and strong. Inconel, because that's a form of steel alloy that provides the ability for the material not to expand or change size with heat. So that's used very often in aerospace and engines and such. The next A, automotive. The vehicles that you drove into to the school here today, very likely the interiors were trimmed with pure water jet. The headliners, the dashboards, the door panels, the carpeting were very likely trimmed with pure water. Also in composites are being used more and more in automotive, and as that moves into the automotive, the water jet will move right along with it, and other lightweight, strong materials. The next A is architecture. Your stone countertops, very popular in remodeling and in hotels now. Your granite and also your engineered stone, those are very often cut with the abrasive water jet. And then the other application for architecture would be where you go into a school or a corporation or a fancy hotel and they have these beautiful inlays on the floor of stone with intricate shapes cut. If the shapes are all squares and triangles, that's going to be cut with a saw. If it's got a shape to it, almost certainly was cut with an abrasive water jet. So the versatility of the process can be used in a variety of applications, and I won't go through each one of those here. We've been working with Paul Jr. for many years. In fact, amazingly, it's 13 years since the first machine went in. You see him there with Vinny, and that's the first small machine, the first flow jet that went into the facility for being televised on an American chopper. And the beautiful partnership that we created there has lasted this long because the flow jet was what the fabricator needed, and we needed to have more people know about the water jet. So when we worked together to get the water jet into the facility, we knew that it would be there for quick art-to-part turnaround. Anything that Paul Jr. could dream up, it was very likely that the machine could create for him and provide material versatility. That's all really, really valuable for a fabricator. And since then, there's been a variety of other machines of greater sophistication that have gone in, such as these 5-axis machines that you see here. So with that, I'd like to introduce Paul Jr. of Paul Jr. Designs. He is a proponent of the youth in manufacturing. He's always been very interested in trying to expand the manufacturing within the United States, and I'm very proud to introduce him now. Paul?
How's everybody doing? Good? Good. So in any event, that was great, thank you. The partnership with Flo and Paul Jr. Designs has been tremendous. I'm going to show you some bikes that we've done through the years, and to be honest with you, we could not have done any of these bikes without Flo's help. I mean, it's just plain and simple. A little background on me, 10 years of American Chopper. 5 of those I was in business with my father, a company called Orange County Choppers. The other 5 was me being in business for myself as Paul Jr. Designs. Around 08, we had a separation. I found myself having to walk away from all the early creations from the early days of the show and create a whole new business at a time where, you know, the market was terrible. '08 was really tough, and so I had to start really figuring out how to make things work. After I separated from my father, I had a 1-year non-compete where I started the design company. I did a project with Coleman, the camping company. We designed a grill that kept me afloat for that full period of time. After that, I started building bikes, and now I've been building bikes for 8 years. So I'm just going to walk you through some of my creative process. Being that we're in Michigan, I figured I'd start with the Cadillac bike. Cadillac came to us and asked us to build a bike for marketing, the CTSV. Here you can see a front 3/4 view of the car, and then here's the front view of the car. And just keep it in your head so when I start to go through the creative process of how the bike turned out, you'll understand where I was going with it. And here is the rear section of the car. And I think in a day and age when cars all look the same, I really believe that Cadillac did a good job with this one, because the rear section of this car is so distinctly Cadillac and so distinctly CTSV. And this is the bike that we came up with, and it actually, you can see how it sits. We used a car airbag underneath the seat for its suspension, so it actually sits upright like a car. It doesn't lean like a motorcycle. And here you can see the back 3/4 view, and you can notice how that rear section flows, and I'll get to that in some later pictures. Just utilization of parts off the car is what we wanted to do. We wanted to incorporate as many parts that made sense off the car into the overall design. Here we actually even used the brake from the CTSV. You can see the yellow styling, the exact paint that the manufacturer gave us, we used on the brake itself. And then stylistically, you can see in the front of the gas tank, we actually incorporated the vent from the front quarter panel of the car. And here we have the top of the gas tank, and we keyed in on the body lines of the car itself, the lines of the hood, the lines going down the side of the car. And we also used a special paint, which was a black diamond paint, which was a limited edition paint that they provided to us. And so here you can see the motor mount cover. And the CTSV car, when you lift up the hood, underneath, the motor's actually covered with a very similar cover, and we wanted to pull that into the bike as well. And as you can see, it says supercharged on each side. You can see the Cadillac emblem, and you can see the V in the middle. We also used the key from the car itself, just to have that full integration. And then also use of the grill. We took some of the grill and we made the air cleaner as well as the primary cover, and utilized some other emblems off of the car. And there it is, the primary and the air cleaner on the side view, and you get a little better perspective of the paint. And then here's something simple. What you're looking at right there is just a riser for the handlebars. And instead of just doing a plain flat riser to get the handlebars to clear the tank, we went ahead and actually machined the cursive Cadillac in there. And for us, it's really the attention to detail that sells the theme. Also, we use the seat area in order to figure out how to get the interior of the bike, interior of the car on the outside of the bike. So Cadillac actually provided us with all the materials that they use on their interior, and we incorporated that in the seat. One of the really impressive features of this bike is the rear section. And this is the widest tire you can actually put on a motorcycle. This was 400 pounds of billet aluminum. And normally a tire for a motorcycle, for the web of the wheel, will go down the center. But what we did is we built an offset into it. So in order to match the car wheel exactly, just the way a rim looks on a car, that is how we accomplished the exact look of what the CTSV has to offer. And then when we set out to do this, we really wanted to make sure that we were nailing the rear section of this car. I knew right away that if we weren't able to nail the rear section of the car onto the bike, then we had failed miserably at what we set out to accomplish. And here you can see we actually took the rear taillights right off the car, modified them, and Frenched them right into the rear fender. We used the same angle as the rear of the car. You can see how we have the CTS and the V on the other side, as well as the exhaust ports. And we knew when we got that right that we had nailed the overall design. And then there's a front 3/4 view, and then there's a full side view, and you can see how the bike itself sits on its frame just the way a car would sit upright. For this next project is in stark contrast to the CTSV because it's for a medical testing equipment company named Cepheid. And they really wanted to get their brand name out there, but they also wanted to get their product out there, which was the Gene Expert. The Gene Expert, unlike the Cadillac car, really only left us with a white box with a gray face. So what do? And here it is with the testing cartridge. So the Gene Expert, I'll give you a little background. This is a really interesting technology. This is able to test in third world countries in remote areas for different diseases in a very rapid period of time, where otherwise it would take 2 weeks. They can do remotely testing for things like TB and MRSA right on site on a laptop. So the technology is really cool, but then again, you're left with what's the creative? And so this is what we came up with. We really wanted this bike to look and feel clinical, just the way the company did. Our goal is always to make the bike feel like that company we're building it for built it themselves. And so here's what we came up with. Here's a front 3/4 view. And one of the really defining features about this bike is the 3-dimensional DNA wheels. I came up with this design thinking about what the technology was about. And again, just like the Cadillac, this was out of a big 400-pound billet aluminum block in order to get that type of 3-dimensional DNA look. So really, I think we sold it hard on the wheels itself. And then keying in on the back of the box, because there's not a lot to work with, we use some of the ventilation system up on the handlebars. So the vents, we actually incorporated in the handlebars. And this is a really good prime example of use of the Flow Waterjet, because you can see how it's just so easy to use when you're trying to do creative stuff like this. This would take you days to do by hand and minutes on the Waterjet. And so, of course, we had to incorporate the Gene Expert into the motor mount cover. They really were looking to get this product out there, so we introduced it to the side of the bike. And what's nice about it is it actually works for us because it hides a lot of our wiring, and we're able to actually sell the theme. And here you can see we even incorporated the cartridge itself, and this one happens to be testing for MRSA. So, you know, it's all this kind of stuff when you're doing this. Remember, all of this is via television. So we're selling this product via our creative process. It's clean. There's no holding up an oil can and saying, buy this product. It's fully integrated. And that's what I love about what we do.
Paul, can I ask you, when you looked at that, I'm over here, sorry, it's Tom.
Yeah.
So when you looked at that box for the first time, did you just go, I mean, there's not a lot to work with there. Can you give us some context for what the time frame is from when you check into an assignment like that and you start to work through in your own head how you're going to make that into something much more exciting?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I didn't talk about is any of the bikes you see, there's no drawings. We have no drawings. I work in 3 dimensions. I have no skills to draw anything, so we always work in real time. All of our clients have been very gracious through the years to not require drawings. Even Cadillac just said, we want to see what you're going to come up with, which is a great honor. So as far as the creative process, you know, some things come like that. Some things don't come until a week after the frame's sitting on the lift and you still can't figure it out. With this bike, I mean, there wasn't a lot to key in on, so I knew what the brand was. I knew it needed to be clinical. I knew the color palette, what it needed to be. And you want to have balance and then the beauty, you know? And then the ideas like the DNA wheels came as the project starts to speak to you as you start to build it in real space. And here, like I said, Cepheid, Gene Expert, just using real estate on the bike in a real clean, flowing way. You can see here something as simple as a battery cover. We were able to Waterjet out their logo, add a better way, which was just their slogan, just nice and tastefully put on there. And even the stuff like the blue accent. Here's the exhaust. What we did with the exhaust is we wanted it to look jet engine-ish. And the way we explained that was, hey, this technology works so fast that we wanted the exhaust to represent that aspect of what was good about it. And just little things like the axle covers, Gene Expert, and then there you have it, the overall side view. just a very clean flowing, clinical bike. What was so cool about this project is that it made no sense. Okay, and so that's what they call outside the box marketing. So why does a medical testing equipment company need a motorcycle? They don't, they need outside the box marketing, right? And for this company, 2 years in a row, they won marketing achievement awards for the medical equipment testing industry. And this one here, this is a 911 Memorial bike. This bike, I'll show it to you in a minute. Dan Tishman from Tishman Construction, him and his father built the first World Trade Center. And he had just gotten the bid to build the new World Trade Center. And he called us up and he said, look, we want you to pay homage to the new World Trade Center via a motorcycle. And I just thought, I was so humbled by that offer, because this guy could go anywhere in the world and get any artist to work in any medium, and he came to us. And so here's a rendering of the new World Trade Center. And you talk about, you got a white box and then this, you know? So the extremes are pretty serious. So here it is represented in a rendering. Some of the One World Trade Center is now up, but when we started the project, it was only half up. And then here you see the transportation hub. And the transportation hub was designed to represent the phoenix rising up out of the ashes. And so this is what we came up with. And so, you know, this bike, as you can see, we wanted it to have a very sculpted look, but we've integrated all kinds of theme and meaning from the project. And here you can see the gas tank, which represents the transportation hub. You can see the Never Forget and the New York on the side. The front wheel is made up of 3 One World Trade Centers. They're actually made in order to represent the glass aspect of the project, because so much of the building is glass on the outside. We actually had glass blown and inserted into the wheels. So it's probably the only glass front wheel on a motorcycle that exists, but we wanted it to just have that high-end feel to it. And you can see the lattice work on the lower leg of the front end. That is representative of 3 World Trade Center. And here for the exhaust represents 2 World Trade Center. You can see the I-beam construction we used to represent the constructed side of things. We went with a polished rear wheel to represent the reflecting pools. And remember, this is all via television, so we're telling the story of what this bike is. There's a top view of the transportation hub gas tank. And what we did with the handlebars here is we created turnbuckle handlebars. Now, a turnbuckle is a tool in which enables you to level a floor of a building. And so we incorporated that in there, and it's a very necessary tool, because until you level the floor of a building, you can't build the next floor. So we thought it would be a great place to put that tool, and it lent itself very nicely to the handlebars. And here you could just see the front view, 911 Memorial, and then the Never Forget, 24 karat gold plated aluminum. We just wanted it to have a very respectful, very refined overall overriding theme. And then some more real estate on the primary, the reflecting pools, the 911 Memorial, and then there it is. You know, we just wanted this to be the most sculpted, artistic bike to represent such a big project. And what's cool about this bike is it resides down at the visitor center, the 911 Memorial Visitor Center. Millions of people every year go there and they see it. You could buy t-shirts and cups, and it actually helps raise money for the 911 Memorial Foundation. The next and last is World of Warcraft. Some of you guys might be familiar with that. This project actually came after American Chopper. Blizzard Entertainment gave us a call and said, hey, we want you to build 2 bikes. One for the 2 factions in our game, one the Horde, one the Alliance. Their idea was in the end that the fan base would come out and vote and pick which vehicle would end up making it into the game. The creative for this was just off the charts, because now you're dealing with a whole world of creative. And so here's some of the imagery that we had to work with. And they gave us tons of it, but to be honest with you, this was the only picture I really needed. This picture and then this one. They wanted us to actually do a 15-part series for webisodes where there's Team Horde and Team Alliance, where they were built tandemly inside my shop, and I had to actually split the shop to do that. And then the crazy part was I had to do the creative for both projects at the same time. So this may have been the most challenging project that I've ever taken on. And for starters, we'll go with the Horde, because the Horde, the overall theme for the Horde is just so over the top. It was just absolutely, we literally had to leave stuff out. There was so much going on in this world of the Horde. And this is what we came up with. And, you know, it's funny, when you're doing these bikes, sometimes you really have to find a balance between form and function. And this has a little bit lower on the function, but very high on the form, because the end result was it was going to be in the video game itself. And so with this, we did the track rear section. We actually used a tractor front tire. And of course, we had these giant tusk front end we had to build for it. So that's actually an aluminum front end with a wood cover on it. And that came off some imagery where there was these big tusks in this one image from this one character, and we just keyed in on it. Here you can see pretty standard, really menacing chain handlebars. And the whole idea of this bike, or I should call it a vehicle, is that we wanted to look like it could just go and be destructive, go through a brick wall and crush everything in its path. We made the tank very weighty. As you can see, we made the tank look like it was made out of 1-inch plate. You could see the raised Horde logo. We brought some wood into it to give it an earthy feel. So we actually did the shield with the Horde logo on it. The fenders, there was a character that if you saw before, he had these spiked shoulder pads. So we figured that's how we would cover the tracks in the rear. And you could see the seat as well. There was a character who had these ripped armbands on, and so they just looked like they were tore up and all stitched back on. And that's where we got the creative for that. And then you see the rear section, both fenders, both tracks, very non-eco-friendly exhaust pipes coming up through the back there. And then there's the front three-quarter view. Really a very challenging project, but it was a really fun one to do. And then the end result was they took our design, which there were no drawings to, which they had no approval process to, and then they reverse engineered it and put it in the game. In all my years of doing this, we've never had anything like that happen. And I just thought, like right now, if you go to play the game, you could go and take that, and that's a mount you can get in the game and drive around on it. And then here's the other side. And then last but not least, the Alliance. And you know, the challenge for this, for me being the guy in the middle, the Horde had so much to offer creatively and was so aggressive that with the Alliance, I couldn't just mail it in, because I had the responsibility to give as much to the Alliance as I did to the Horde. And so this is how we matched its aggressiveness. And so essentially what you see here is articulating armor throughout. You can see how the front swords are matching, they're kind of matching that tusk, but it's much more knightish, much more in line with what Alliance is all about. Instead of doing a headlight, we actually did a shield. That's the symbol, that lion face is the symbol for the Alliance. And this is a great, I mean, this is just an absolute perfect picture of what that Flow Waterjet has afforded us all these years, because if you look at that, you could almost never, it would take you weeks to do it by hand, but we're able to cut all that out on the Waterjet with the holes for the rivets and put it together like a puzzle. Then polish it up, figure out how to mount it, and that's how we get the end result. And here you can see we have crossed swords for handlebars and articulating armor gas tank. We actually had to build a gas tank that was about 4 feet long. Then we cut it in sections and put each piece inside the next in order to get this effect. And you can see it's all trimmed out with polished brass. Here we have the seat. The seat is a little bit more regal than the Horde's, a little bit more filigree, a little bit more honorable. And then here's the rear section, obviously mounting the tank. Again, all this detail trim, all done on the Waterjet. And all the aluminum hammered out by very skilled craftsmen. And here's the back three-quarter view. I mean, here's the back view. And then here's the side view of the actual reverse engineered vehicle that you would actually drive around in the game itself. Here's the other side. I prefer the Alliance. I think it looks better in the game, but that's just me. And then that's it. So, thank you.
Surgeons are often known to design tools for themselves when they get frustrated because the tool doesn't exist when they're performing surgery. You started fabricating bikes when you were 12, is that correct?
Not actually bikes when I was 12, but I started in my father's steel business when I was 12. So I started kind of honing my skill set from a mechanical standpoint, but nowhere near on the creative level of the bikes.
So my question is, what was life like before and after the Flowjet? And no, this is not a paid endorsement.
But honestly, I'll be honest with you, it was like we were working like with prehistoric equipment. I mean, it was like throwback almost because and it worked, you know. I mean, we were able to build bikes before that, but our product, the time frame we were able to do it in just quadrupled, right? And that was really important for the show because of the timeline of the show and the quality of product we got. Then you start designing everything with the Flowjet in mind. I got to tell you, I've been doing endorsements for all these years. This is the easiest product I've ever had to endorse because it has made my life so much easier. So when I'm thinking creative, I'm thinking you could have great creative ideas, but if you can't execute them, then they're not worth anything. Flow has enabled us to execute the ideas we come up with.
So my follow-on is, if there's an enterprising engineer in the audience tonight, is there a tool that hasn't been created yet that might make your life easier?
Oh, I'm sure there's dozens. I just haven't thought of them.
Okay. All right, hang on.
Are all of these bikes fully functional, like the 9/11 Memorial with the glass wheel and?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, the 9/11 Memorial, there's enough aluminum encasement around the wheel where it is functional. That is a little bit of a lower functioning bike because it was really meant to be more of an art piece than some of the bikes. They all have a level of art to them, but like I said, you're always walking that fine line of form and function when you're really trying to sell that theme.
So this is a question relating to a book we're reading in class, and it is planning to adapt is a concept that may be new to our students in the audience. Talk to us about learning by doing, about being proactive. Conversely, talk about learning from a turning point or an outside failure.
Sure.
I think a great example in the Waterjet technology, I was in graduate school working on R&D on a flow Waterjet. And the mixing tube that you saw in the picture, that the final rifle barrel that the water and the abrasive comes out, they were wearing out, we were using C2 and C4 tungsten carbide tubes. They were wearing out in about 10 hours, 8 hours, and they were not wearing round. So if you have a jet that's moving around a part, it's not round, it's not going to cut an accurate part. So we started doing advanced testing of all different sorts of materials, getting deep into the material sciences. Started working with a company called Boride Products, now owned by Kennametal. Anyway, we ended up doing testing at the university, and I was conducting the testing in the very, very first year of Waterjet being commercialized. And we ended up going from a C2 or C4 carbide to a nano-grained composite carbide. What that means is the grains of the carbide were grown really fast, so they didn't get big. There's no glass or cobalt binder in there, so there was no room for the abrasive particles to come in, get behind a grain of carbide, because carbide's really, really hard. But it was the binder that kept failing, so it was a nano-grained composite carbide. The life went from say 8 hours to 100 hours, and it always wore out round, and it revolutionized the industry. It was called NGS 17 because we had tried 16 materials before it. And the NGS stands for New Good Stuff. And that actually is what it was called. We went out on the market. It's made by the RockTech technology, and it's got all these trade names and everything with it, but it was really NGS 17.
For me, like when I first started, if things broke, then I just built them stronger. I mean, so often in the early days of building motorcycles, we would make stuff that looked good but didn't quite function the way it should, and so it would break. And then, you know, the next time you would make it differently or stronger or position it differently. And the thing with motorcycles is, especially with the V-twin motors, there's a lot of vibration. So from an engineering standpoint, you had to very quickly adjust to what was working and what wasn't working. And because it was all so new, because we were being innovative and trying all new things, all new creative looks, adapting things to bikes, getting, you know, you see the variation of things that we do with the motorcycles. And so after a certain period of time of a lot of trial and error, after a while you get out of that curve and you just start to build things that don't break and are still able to have the aesthetic that need to be there. But definitely, like, the curve aspect of it was a great learning lesson for me early on. It does almost entirely go away, but occasionally you might have something that you didn't anticipate, and you'll get a break, and you'll have to remake something. But you start to that starts to kind of go away after a period of time.
I'd add just a couple of comments. I remember learning a long time ago, if something, you know, gets jammed, you can finagle it or you can try and force it, and if it breaks, it needed a replacement anyway, you know. So you can try different things, and in business, that's what happens. I mean, you can come up with a business plan, and you're projecting everything's kind of going to be smooth. But the reality is life gets in the way, and things happen, and you have to adapt. You have to be agile, and you have to adjust. And so even in our organization at SME, we're growing one of our business units. We're going to double the sales in a really short period of time, and we're investing. Well, we took that step forward to take that risk. And do we have all the answers? No. And sure, life gets in the way. Things happen, and you adjust. And it's worth taking that risk. And I remember, well, just a couple of weeks ago, I was down in Washington, D.C., and we were talking about manufacturing and technologies, and Dean Kamen was one of the speakers, and I'm going to share with you one of his phrases, and I'll paraphrase it the best that I can. And he talked about innovation and trying different things, and he said, you know what? I'd rather have one of those rare successes combined with several failures than suffer the warm death of mediocrity. And I thought that was pretty profound. So, yeah, you got to learn, you got to adapt, and then you go on.
Hi, I have a very practical question about the 9/11 Memorial Bike, because I couldn't really figure out the gas tank. Could it store gasoline, and if yes, where? And if yes, how far can you get with that bike if you drive it?
Sorry.
The question was, is the gas tank on the 911 bike functional? If so, how? Because I think she was confused by the description. And how far can you get on that bike was the question.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. It is functional. It's minimal, and that was really by design. It's actually in the neck of the bike. It does not hold much fuel. It probably held enough fuel just for us to drive it through New York City, out in front of the 9/11 Memorial Visitors Center, where the governor got on the bike and did a presentation. That was it. So it would go a little further. It might, but it was really meant to be kind of minimalistic in function and extremely high in form. We knew where it was going to reside, which is kind of like as an art piece down in the city at the memorial. So we designed it with that in mind. Low function, high, value in the creative.
Speaking to your the trial and error process and your partnership, I'm just curious, with a creative guy like Paul, how much feedback he's had towards the development or furthering how much the capability of the flow Waterjet has. Like, what kind of ideas has he brought to the table?
I think that's a great question. Working with Paul Jr. Designs is definitely working with someone who's going to push the envelope of the creative side. And the key to that, in my mind, is to get the feedback from Paul on the art to part. How fast and quickly can we get the software to be able to go from his designs and then get it into the system to be cut. So, for example, I know Vinny, so I'll talk about Paul and Vinny. Vinny would be able to take the drawings and either redraw them, or if they were close enough to scale and you wanted to get a certain flare, you can actually take it as a JPEG, scan it, bring it in, and then do a raster to vector conversion. That whole raster to vector, all that was really listening to Paul and customers like him about how to shorten the time from art to part. The Waterjet's used in machine shops and in fab shops, but 70% is really in fab shops, and the fab shop needs that quick turnaround. Machine shops are almost always going to go off of a CAD file or a solid model, but the fab shop will go off of anything.
Careful,
So
careful,
that's a
Chip.
good
He was
example.
negotiating for royalties before class started. You don't want to be on tape here giving him too much credit.
I already hit him up back there.
I know. Trying to keep everybody covered here. We got a question right here.
Hello. Yeah, I really liked your speech. It was really awesome. I watch your show a lot growing up. And actually, me, my brother, and my dad all ride bikes, different kind of bikes. We actually all ride crotch rockets. So I had a question about that. So I understand you designed a grill, but predominantly you design cruisers. Have you ever thought about going into crotch rockets, cars, anything like that?
Yeah, you know, I really don't. I'll just take opportunity. You know, for me, the motorcycles have been the opportunity, and I do love working with them. I like that there's just enough to work with, but still parameters. I've used the V-twin platform, but we've used lawnmower motors. So really, there's no restrictions on what I would do. I'm not partial to anything. So the short answer is yes, I would do more of the sport bike style bikes and do some creative around that. Currently, I've built 2 cars, and I just finished a 3rd. So the car thing is kind of coming into play. The tough part about cars is they just take forever. I mean, you could take a year to build a car. Where with the bikes, you know, in 8 weeks I can have a pretty, you know, most of the bikes you saw there are no longer than an 8-week project, just due to our 10 years of being under pressure deadlines. It kind of forms you into having to be able to operate at a very high level of creative and be able to execute in a time frame that most people could never imagine. So yes, I think I'm really wide open to any type of design, to be honest with you. Even could be interior. I mean, I love design more than I love motorcycles or the different platforms.
With the World of Warcraft bikes, were those snowmobile tracks on them?
Sorry?
Were those snowmobile tracks on them? Or no?
Yeah, the one we used rear quad tracks, and then we used a tractor off a tractor front tire. And then the other one was some kind of setup to turn a motorcycle into like a mono-track snowmobile, and that's what we used there. And so we used one of the front tracks from the quad setup, and then we used this mono-track rear that was supposed to adapt to the bike. You know what's interesting about that? It had like a slide system, where a snowmobile has like a slide system in the back, and then the snow cools it. Well, what we did was we took those brackets off, and we have another piece of technology that we're able to do 3D measuring called the Faro arm, and then that talks to our machines, and then we went and we integrated bogey wheels into that. We water jetted that all out of aluminum, and because we were able to locate everything, we bolted on and added wheels so that it would actually function on some level on dry ground and not be on a slide system. So it's just, I'll be honest with you, a lot of what I do with the FlowJet, not just creatively aesthetic, is reverse engineering, like adapting things to each other. And you know, that's like, I just think mechanically so much in that direction, and I tie it into the creative, and that's how you get what you saw me walk through.
We are timing out here for class. The good news is Paul and some of the bikes and these gentlemen will be in the gallery in the connector after class. So if you would like a chance to see his work up close and personal, you should do that. Final question for all 3 of you from me. This is also a nod to our reading from last week. A lot of people talk about following their passion. Some people say, just go get a job and your passion will find you. Do all 3 of you very quickly have a point of view? Are you pro follow your passion, or are you go get a job?
I believe you have 3 choices in life. You can have a job, you can have a career, you can have a life's work. For Waterjet, I chose a life's work, and I think it's much more fulfilling.
Yeah, I say follow your passion. I mean, look, I say here, I have no higher education. I think education's the best, but I have no higher education. I have absolutely no training in the area of creative. I've never taken an art class. I've never read an article or a book on creativity. I had the opportunity, and I just followed my dreams every step of the way, and here I am talking to you guys about the creative process, and so I just say go for it.
Jeff, final word is yours.
Well, I'm a little bit of a hybrid. I'd love to say follow your passion, but if I look at what I've done over my career, I've looked at the opportunities. So I've been more opportunistic, learn something, have a purpose for what you're doing and why you're doing it, and let the course develop.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's have a round of applause. There is no class tomorrow. Everybody have a great, healthy, safe fall break.
And I was gigging out more than I was studying. I was doing some touring stuff, playing with the band, and then one night...
CFE does not endorse this. I'm kidding. Be honest.
You need the inflection point, the aha moment. I was in a recording studio, and I looked around, and I see all these blinking lights and knobs,